We watch shows online and we rate them. Talk about how much we love them or hate them. Yes, we're like everyone else on the internet, no need to get chatty. But hey, if you enjoy people ranting for hours, welcome friend to Bingeworthy. Hello and welcome to another special edition of Bingeworthy. I'm Yana.
I'm Rebecca.
And today we're going to talk about the Once Upon a Time Season 6 finale. Off the top of my head, without thinking about it, I really enjoyed it. Now, when I start thinking about it, that's another question, but I really enjoyed it. I came off of that finale with a good feeling.
Oh yeah, the tied up of the ending, excellent. Like the moment just before that, which is all about people making weird speeches about light that make no sense. Light destroys light.
We'll get to that. And by the way, thanks Once Upon a Time. I've been singing your gosh darn songs from your musical episode for the past couple of days.
I think you've actually
Tomorrow
downloaded
is uncertain. Who knows what it will bring? We're very slightly channeling Regina personalities here. Very, very, very vaguely.
You are recognizably Mayor Regina.
Am I?
Yes, I knew exactly
Oh,
who
thank
you were
you.
when I first saw you.
Really? I
Yes.
wasn't even necessarily thinking about
It's
that.
the grey. It's the exact shade of grey she wears quite frequently.
I do love the trademark
Donkey,
Mayor
kind of thing.
Regina sort of thing.
I'm not really channeling Evil Regina. I'm just wearing a corseted top with lots of cleavage, which is pretty Evil Regina, and jeans, which is not Evil Regina at all.
Spoilers!
Spoilers!
So the plot of this 2-hour season finale in a nutshell. I might need a coconut shell for this one. It's 2 episodes. Okay, so the Black Fairy's curse has hit, and we find out that what the curse has done is it has taken Regina, Zelina, Snow, Charming, and Hook back to the Enchanted Forest to separate them from Emma. Emma is still in Storybrooke, Henry is still in Storybrooke, and everyone in Storybrooke has completely forgotten everything about fairy tales again. Emma is in an insane asylum because she's convinced that she had delusions about fairy tale characters and she doesn't believe in fairy tales again. Henry is aware of what's happening, so his job is to try and convince Emma to believe that it was all real again. And everything in Storybrooke is basically the way it was during the very first curse way back, except that obviously Snow, Charming and Regina aren't there, so the Black Fairy is the mayor. She's basically taken Regina's place, and she's also taken the place of Henry's adopted mother.
Yeah, so many mothers in this.
Too many. Henry is like related to the whole entire world. I felt really bad for Jared because I really like Jared. I think he's a great kid, turning into a great young man right now, and all he ever gets to do in this show is talk to one of his mothers or potentially some other character and go, you need to believe it's gonna be fine, and just be everyone's life coach. And that's just very unfair to both the character and the actor. I feel like they could have done more with him, so that's a little bit sad. I'm hoping that at least the character will get more to do in the next season.
I'm not sure why the Black Fairy decided to adopt Henry and pretend to be his mother.
It doesn't really matter. We're just referencing the first...
Despite the fact that she's his great-grandmother.
I don't mind that not being logical. We're just referencing the beginning of the show,
He has
which is
4
nice.
mothers in this episode.
Who cares?
I don't care. He's got 4 mothers. I feel like somebody should point that out. 4! Collects mothers like other people collect books.
Basically, that's our premise, and we find out that the final battle is literally just Emma's inner struggle between believing or not believing in fairy tales. Again! For some bizarre, illogical, God knows who came up with this reason, we're doing Neverending Story, where all of the... minus Flying Dog. We're doing Neverending Story where all of the realms are disappearing into black nothingness. like the Enchanted Forest and Oz, and like Zelina's just escaped from Oz and she shows up in the Enchanted Forest.
Disappeared.
Agrabah's disappeared. So all of the realms are disappearing because Emma doesn't believe that the fairy tales are
now,
real
interestingly
anymore.
enough, all the realms managed to survive when Emma didn't believe in the first place. And the fairy tale lands managed to survive before Emma was born. But now, if she loses her belief, all of them disappear because apparently everything revolves around Emma Swan. It's something to do with both the Black Fairy's Curse and the final battle thing. It ended up being about story and
Destiny and whatever.
But it does make it very much revolving around Emma as the keystone for literally everything existing, which is a bit much.
This would have made a whole lot more sense if at least it had revolved around Henry. It would have been great to see, for once, Henry not being the person saying to everyone, oh, you have to believe and it's fine. It would have been amazing to see him being cursed into not believing and Emma having to convince him.
She could still be in the asylum and trying to break out. It would. Besides, I also made the reference that this show has got not only never-ending story, but Terminator 2 in it. And that Emma is in that tank top, doing the pull-ups, in the asylum, because the bad guy thinks she's crazy. Like, if she was the person saying to Henry, you're a fairy tale character, I'm a fairy tale character, and she ended up in the asylum because of that, and he doesn't believe her, then we'd have Terminator 2. It would be such a good story. And Henry's the true believer, so you could kind of get, and the author.
And the author.
So you could kind of get the idea that if he stopped believing, things would stop existing because he's the author, he's writing them. I could buy that. That would be a lot more clearer narrative, and it wouldn't revolve all around Emma.
So that's happening there. In the Enchanted Forest, people are trying to find a way to get back. We have this insane side plot that eventually goes nowhere, with Hook trying to climbing the beanstalk with Charming and finding a bean, but in the end they end up not being able to use the bean. So that was literally only there to give them something to do. And
that's a good point.
The only thing that happens, no, they never used it. There was no point to that side plot. The only point of it is that Hook makes like 5 speeches. God knows why, because nobody's arguing with him.
Scene.
It's really funny.
It's like the first bit where Charming's like, dude, do you really want to make my daughter a widow? And he's like, I love your daughter. I'm great for your daughter. Your daughter's amazing. I will get back to your daughter, and I love your daughter, and you have to accept me as your son-in-law, and I'm amazing, and I've turned a page, and I'm awesome. And Charming's just like,
yeah, he goes on for like 5 minutes, and David isn't really arguing with him. He's just sitting there.
There's this whole bit about how you have to accept, you can't like disapprove of me, and I know I'm not what you would have wanted for a son-in-law. All kinds of weird stuff where Charming's just like, I literally just said, don't climb a beanstalk and make my daughter a widow. I did say, you have got a lot of really repressed self-respect issues there, son. Like, I'm sorry.
People make a lot of speeches in these 2 episodes that are really unwarranted. You're not quite sure where they come from, but anyway, they're fun. So we get a tiny bit of, I guess, what's meant to be bonding between Hook and Charming, but I feel like we're way past that stage and that's already happened.
I'm sure they bonded in season 3.
I don't know. We're way past that stage, but never mind. Then the beanstalk falls. They sort of get separated. Charming gets lost somewhere under the beanstalk, and we don't know if he's alive. Well, of course we know he's alive, but Hook goes back to the others. Snow looks for Charming. We get a little referential scene to the Charming quaking Snow with a kiss thing, because she finds him, he's unconscious, almost presumed dead, you'd expect, and she kisses him and he wakes up, and we get like flashbacks to when he kissed her. It's very cute if you don't think about it at all. If you start thinking about it, it's complete nonsense, because in this episode, True Love's kiss seems to bring people back from the dead.
Twice.
Makes 0 sense. Twice.
Once from being crushed by a very high fall by a beanstalk. Second time from being impaled.
Yeah, this show has no internal logic, but who cares? Fairy tales, magic works in weird ways in this, never question it. The Evil Queen shows up, as in not Regina, but the Evil Queen. If you watch the season, you know that they are 2 separate people now. The Evil Queen, who has up until now been gallivanting around with Robin Hood in a separate realm, because they're a couple now. And she's all like, yo, hi, what's up, guys? They are trying to make the bean work, but there's not enough magic and they need time. And Regina's like, okay, if I use my magic and the evil queen uses her magic, then maybe together we'll manage to make the bean work. But they're running out of time because the darkness is swallowing them, and the evil queen suddenly goes, okay, go! I'm gonna sacrifice myself and save you. I'm gonna stop it and I'm gonna buy you some time. And Regina's like, but you're gonna die. And she's like, that's fine, whatever, go. The scene could be more impactful than it is, but again...
It could be more like Magneto when Magneto takes out the Sentinels in Days of Future Past, because that has impact.
Spoilers for Days of Future Past?
Oh my god, like people have, it's like been years. If you need a spoiler warning for Days of Future Past, why haven't you seen it?
So while this is happening and Regina is trying to make the bean work, they're literally all of them huddled together in a little space with the darkness closing in on all sides. This should be really dramatic, but the entire time, all I was thinking was, for goodness sake, Hook could have used that bean as soon as he found it, and literally all it should have taken, because the bean initially was fresh and would have worked, but by the time he got back to Snow and Charming, to the Evil Queen's castle, it had shriveled and it was tainted basically by the darkness and by the fact that Emma doesn't believe in fairy tales
All
anymore.
he had to do.
But when he got it, it was fine. All he had to do
was throw it, go to the portal, go to Emma, go, look here, I have a hook, I'm Captain Hook, it's all real.
Goats who,
It's
just like Henry,
ambiguous whether or not he remembers, though I picked from the beginning that he would, because the last curse didn't affect him. He's kind of been
it did until he heard Emma's name. But still, you kind of expect him to have something up his sleeve, and he does, and we find out that he's aware that there's a curse. He hasn't been affected.
He's aware of his past, and he's aware that Bella's missing.
After Emma leaves Storybrooke, and Henry basically fails to convince her to stay, he decides that if she can't fight the final battle, then he will fight it. He goes to Mr. Gold and says, okay, you have to help me. This is my family out there. This is our family. We have to save them. This was your opportunity for Rumpel to actually have a redemption moment, a proper one, and just go, yeah, okay, I'll help you. Cheesy cliche, but this is a cheesy cliche show. It's fine. You want to sympathize with Rumpel. In order for him to be sympathetic, he has to show you something more, give you something more. That could be, I actually care about my grandson, and this one time, I've always said no. I've always walked away every single time. When Bellfire died and the town was going to be destroyed, he was like, I don't care, my son is dead. It's always about one person. And if you wanted to have this huge redemption at the end of the season, it had to suddenly be, I have realized that if I care, I should care about more than just my wife or my current son. Instead, he goes, no, all I care about is Belle. You're on your own, but here, have the sword and go whatever you want to do. I'm just
It's his grandson. It is the son of Bellfire.
I'm just gonna go and look for Belle again.
Fucking Belle, man. Fuck, can I just jump in with Belle for a second?
Jump in with Belle.
I don't think this needs much retelling in the plot line. We find that the black fairies hidden Belle in a house and made her a coward.
Yeah. Again.
And it is the worst played out story because they've made her cowardly, which is meant to be, I guess,
I think she was just meant to have yet another mental disorder, because that's what we do with Belle in this show. I think
she's scared of everything.
And
it's not poignant at all. Like, there's
out.
literally no emotional impact to Gold finding his wife, who is now terrified of everything and doesn't want to leave her house. They played it completely wrong. She just kind of slams the door and stands on the other side of it is like, I don't want to leave, and he's like, I'm going to kill the Black Fairy.
Emma has been convinced to leave town. She leaves town, she goes back to Boston, but then Henry has mailed her Henry has mailed her this handwritten book that describes her story. So she finally believes. She comes back and is like, okay, this is kind of insane, but the person described in this book is the person I want to be, even if I'm not sure that I am. So I believe, and the moment she says, I believe, of course, the darkness stops and everyone's alive. Belle and Rumpel's son, who is now an adult, because people's ages in this show never matter, is being controlled by the Black Fairy who has his heart, and she has ordered him to kill Emma Swan. There is a really nonsensical line about the Black Fairy goes, well, I never had the ability to kill Emma because darkness cannot extinguish light. Only light can extinguish light, which makes absolutely no sense, but never mind.
Her plan is, I think, summarized is she kills Emma, then she can control all magic without any rules and there won't be any prices to pay, and she can do anything, including bring people back from the dead. So she kind of offers him that power to be able to make everybody love him even if he's still the Dark One, to bring Bellfire back, to bring, you know, all the people he loves who's died.
Stuff.
The usual kind of ultimate bad guy offer, and he's just like, fuck that. He kills his mom. Emma starts remembering, so the curse kind of starts lifting, and then her family comes back, and Gideon turns up and is like, yo, gonna kill you.
Yeah.
And she's like, yo, not gonna do that. Regina and her have this weird conversation where Regina's like, look, you always believed in me, you're gonna do what's right, you'll know what it is when you figure it out, you'll be okay.
Yeah, no, the conversation is sort of about, because they go, okay, it's gonna be bad either way. If you kill him, the light disappears. If he kills you, the light disappears. If Emma kills Gideon, then she will be tainted and she won't be, you know, the pure savior anymore because she will have murdered essentially an innocent person. And if he kills her, again, light will die because he will have killed the savior. And Regina's like, look, she has this really, it's a cute moment, but
it's just the timing
it's just a little bit weird because she goes, oh, remember how much you and I used to fight at the beginning because I was Henry's mother and you were Henry's mother and we were fighting about who was Henry's mother, but then you came up with a third option and we were both his mother, so now you're gonna come up with a third option as well, which is a nonsense because it's not really Emma who came up with the third option. It's not like Emma showed up and was like, oh, you know what, I have a great idea. We're both gonna be his mother.
Yeah, didn't quite happen
really
like that.
No. It didn't really happen like that.
It wasn't Emma just
sort of
being like,
happened.
hey, Regina, we should just both mother him.
It wasn't quite like that. I mean, she was obviously the more benevolent of the two at the beginning, but it really wasn't, hey, I've got a third option thing.
Well, if he turned into such a fainting damsel in distress, and that's not Belle. Like, that shouldn't be Belle. She fucking goes down to a basement with Rumpel to find their son's heart. She twists her fucking ankle and has to sit there and wait for him to do everything on his own. She twists her ankle! How much more of a Victorian fainting fucking damsel in distress can you be? That just so pissed me off. And I mean, I've never been a huge fan of the way that
she would have hopped, like real Belle, original Disney Belle, would have hopped on one foot to go and find her kid. She would have
just sat there and gone, oh shit, I can't walk. Best let my at best emotionally unhinged and morally ambiguous husband take care of it, because that always works out well.
Belle's whole story is about Rumpel, and that's a problem. They never managed.
She doesn't have her own story.
I feel like they tried, and they just kind of couldn't find their groove with her, and it just never worked out.
She was sidelined into being a babysitter, and being the angry wife who gets left behind out of everything. She never got to do anything.
Again and again. Goad goes and finds Gideon's heart. At which point, Rumpelstiltskin shows up. As in, you have Goat and you have Rumpelstiltskin.
A lot of people who are dual-natured in this.
Yes, a lot of
Talking to themselves.
split personalities and talking to themselves. But Rumpelstiltskin shows up, evil Rumpelstiltskin, and he has this conversation with Goat in which he is like, no, you really want power, this is what you want. It's Goat's, it is what is meant to be Goat's ultimate moment of redemption, because he's talking to, as he says himself, the devil on his shoulder, and they're arguing back and forth, and eventually Goat just goes, no, I'm going to do the right thing this time, and takes the heart and says, Gideon, I command you not to kill Emma Swan, you don't have to do that anymore. But it doesn't work. Because obviously his mother suspected that this might happen, so I don't know, she made the spell so that it didn't work, but it just doesn't work. Which is yet another thing which doesn't go anywhere. The problem is that I don't get the feeling that he's doing it out of concern for anyone else. I feel like he's doing it to prove himself to Belle, which...
Yeah, that too.
I really want Rumpo to be redeemed, but the problem is that we have recycled this so many times.
This is not the first time I've done
that
this.
it doesn't have any impact anymore. You cannot redeem a character with just loving one person. If you want to redeem them, they have to start caring in general. They have to become a decent person.
Yeah, it's still a very selfish kind of redemption. He's redeemed because he wanted to save the woman he loves personally. He doesn't give a fuck about his grandson or anybody else. In fact, he'd probably have let the Black Fairy do whatever she wants if she hadn't messed with Belle.
So he comes back to Belle and says, hey, I made the right choice, but it just didn't work out. And she clearly forgives him and hugs him and all is well with them, which he's done this before. He's made the right choice before. You need to give me something bigger, or something different at least, not necessarily bigger. We've had moments when Rumpo has made the good choice. This is nothing new. For all I know, they're gonna keep going back and forth, and 5 minutes later he's gonna go to the dark side again, and
He's
that's
in
gonna
season
happen again.
7.
I like Rumpo, and I think that the show doesn't do him justice.
No.
I never agreed with the
The
power
moments
thing.
where he does actually give a shit about more people than just that one person are the moments where he's most interesting as a redeemed character. Because the rest of the time, why not just keep him that ambiguous trickster? Like, you could go either way. If he's going to be redeemed, he needs to be redeemed properly.
I would have really enjoyed Rumpo always just staying in a grey area and being accepting of this. We could have gone with he, as Rumpelstiltskin and as the Dark One, has a function in this world and he's necessary for the world to...
Which would be really easy to argue because a trickster, grey area character is in so many fairy tales, and that kind of...
He makes the stories
observer who's in the background, who both sides can go to for help, who has his own agenda and you're never quite sure what he's planning, but you know he's planning something. It's a fabulous character.
You could still keep him sympathetic. He could be ever so slightly leaning towards the side of good.
That kind of character is always sympathetic, let's face it. Everyone always
true.
loves the trickster, black sheep no one ever quite trusts. It's a fabulous character.
But you can make him accepting of that role and make it a legitimate role, a legitimate position within the world that's necessary, rather than always going back and forth with him trying to redeem himself, but ultimately just kind of not giving a damn enough. Because that's what it always looks like. He's kind of like, yeah, I kind of want to be good, but I don't really want it that much. And that makes it really difficult to sympathize.
I kind of want, like, a six-pack, but...
I don't really feel like putting in the effort.
Yeah.
Because the problem is that when we had Regina's redemption arc, she was genuinely trying and things were happening that were preventing her from, you know, becoming the person she wanted to be. With Goat, it's never something else preventing him. It's always him sort of trying and then going, So many things in this episode start and don't go anywhere. It's like the Bean and the Hook and Charming and then the Emma and the third option thing.
She makes this speech about how she's the savior and she has light and hope and everything good in this world, and then she kind of throws the sword away and lets him stab her.
Which, by the way, once again, after the whole speech about the third option, you would
It's not a
expect her
third
to come
option.
up with a third option.
That is the one or the other.
Even he mentions it, because she throws the sword away, and he's like, "Damn, I was sort of hoping you'd manage to save us both."
Yeah. And then light comes out of her and makes everything better and blah 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 blah. And she's dead, but Henry kisses... No, Hook or Henry? Henry kisses her and she comes back to life.
Yeah, for the second time in this
And
episode.
then all
a
the
kiss.
curses are broken, because there'll be so many curses that are broken in this. And like...
I get why. I get
Gideon
that
becomes a baby again, and everybody returns to how they should be, and blah blah blah.
everything is awesome.
Yeah.
So yes, the true love's kiss thing that always works out to the plot's convenience. There is no rhyme or reason as to why Henry kissing Emma in this, apart from the nostalgic. We are referencing the first season, which I'm down with. It's great. You are wrapping up an entire era of Once Upon a Time. You should be referencing the
magic,
beginning.
and he has magic. Like, we see him use it. He's got magic. If Gideon had used magic to strike Emma down, and that had like hurt her in some way, and she'd seemed to die, I'd have been a lot better buying it. I'd have been like, okay, it's obviously a spell of some kind.
Well, it is a magic final battle with magical swords and stuff.
I don't buy it. It's a sword. It impaled her.
I'm divided. I like the references to season 1. It's just that within the plot they don't make sense. As I've said multiple times, I rarely care about the plot in Once Upon a Time because caring about the plot in Once Upon a Time is a recipe for disaster. It consists entirely of plot holes.
Yeah.
So that's alright. I still like the references. I like looking back. I like all the flashbacks. That's all cute and it's fun and it makes you feel all warm and fuzzy.
They went so retconny.
I think one of the things I really enjoyed were a couple of lines from Snow, which were something to the effect of, we've been looking for all of these happy endings, but the happy ending is in looking forward to that every single day.
So then we get a really rather sweet tying up of everyone's stories. We get Snow and Charming on their farm. Snow leaves...
Was it a farm?
Yeah, it was a farm.
Wow, okay.
On their farm with their big house, which doesn't look like a farmhouse, but there were stables out the back, so it was a farm. With their kid and his dog, and she's going to work, and he's a stay-at-home dad.
At least it seems like he's a stay-at-home dad. I don't know what David is doing.
We get Emma and Hook, who are now working together as sheriffs. We get Regina and Emma saying goodbye to Henry as he goes to school and kissing his forehead. And we get Regina coming back to her office. I think she's mayor again.
Yeah, she's mayor. Yeah, she's been a mayor. I think that apart from the small bit where Snow was the mayor
bad idea time.
Yeah,
because she was not a good mayor.
Yeah, Snow was not
and
a good mayor.
And she finds that the dwarves have
Regina's
changed the sign on her door to being queen, and there's like...
Yeah, it's like Regina Mills Queen. Which, instead of Regina Mills Mayor, which I thought was really silly, but...
It's really silly, but I found the moment between the dwarves and the queen really nice.
The looks were cute. The acting was cute.
The idea was silly, but the acting was really sweet.
Yeah, the acting
she was
was
just
cute.
like, oh, and we're like, yeah, we like you now. And she's like, ah.
Yeah.
It's very sweet. And then you kind of just get everybody having a meal together and Rumple and Belle and their kids.
Yeah, in the meantime, all of the other realms have been restored. Agrabah is restored, whatever. And we get probably one of the cutest things. We get the evil queen in her castle brushing her hair, and there's an arrow that shoots through the window with a ring attached to it.
Yeah, it's really
and Robin's voice, which says, "Are you ready for another adventure?" So those two are getting hooked up, which is cute. It's fine. They can go and be happy together. Awesome. Actually really love that. I hated Regina with Robin for some reason. The really cartoonish evil queen who's just evil queen and is not Storybrooke Regina and Mayor Regina. I totally ship with Robin. I have no issue with that.
Yeah,
Well
that's
done,
not
Once Upon a
better.
Time. I did not believe that you could ever do something that I would enjoy with that pairing, because I hated Robin and Regina with the passion of 1,000 suns. I apologize to people who ship them. They just didn't work for me.
Me
There are multiple reasons
His
why.
hair.
It doesn't really matter why. It's totally fine if you ship them, if you love them, then
Sure,
that's
it's lovely.
great. That's great. You got to enjoy them, but I just really hated it. So I'm really glad we have Robin and the Evil Queen. That's fantastic. Totally down with that. Perfect. Find somebody else for Regina, please.
We've neglected to mention that in the first episode we get this weird flashback scene to the Enchanted Forest where an adult who I knew was grown-up Henry because I saw a headline online and it had the picture, so I got spoiled for that. Got the storytell book and he gives it to his daughter, Lucy, and he's like, I'll hold it off until you can get away, and he fights something and disappears, and she gets rescued by Tiger Lily. So in the last episode, the last scene we have is Lucy on a bus with the storytell book. Fairy tale book. And she goes to his apartment, and it's a direct replication of the very first scene in the first episode where she knocks on the door and he opens it and she's like, are you Henry Mills? And he's like, yes. And she says, I'm your daughter, we need to go save our family. And he's like, I don't have a daughter. And she's like, yes you do, you need to come now. Yeah. So it's a direct replication, and it was kind of cute, and I like her. She's a very cute child.
She's a cute child. I love that. I like references in general. I like
I can buy
back.
watching grown Henry and his daughter. I'm interested to see where that goes. You've sold me on that.
I'm in general
I would probably watch that entire season.
Yeah. In general, I am interested in season 7. I am more excited about it than I have been about any other Once Upon a Time season past the second one, because they've been going downhill, and starting a new story in a slightly different way and some of the cast leaving, I think will be potentially a good thing about the show.
Yeah.
I enjoy Regina, Rumpo and Hook. The 7th season is meant to be centered around them. They are probably my 3 favorite characters, so I'm completely down with that. That's great.
I'm happy. It's not going to be, and as much as I like Emma and her actress, in the seasons I've seen, they have been rehashing the same storyline with her for such a long time. She's gotten some pretty bad stuff to do.
We were talking about why I've been having issues for a while with Emma's drama in the show in general.
Yeah, it was an interesting take on it. I think it was quite accurate.
The problem I have with buying into Emma's struggles and her pain is that compared to every other character in this show, her problems are maybe not insignificant but very small. For 6 seasons, her entire drama has been, I was an orphan and I felt lonely and I didn't have a family. It's not that that's not dramatic, it is. But she is standing next to people who have watched so many loved ones die and have had their lives destroyed multiple times over so many years, occasionally centuries. It's
people
just
who've lived for centuries trying to get revenge for their wife dying and their hand being cut off and their brother dying, and like Regina, who was forced into a loveless marriage after seeing her diabolical mother rip her loved one's heart out and crush it. You've got Snow, who her parents died, her dad was murdered
by her stepmother, who she initially
was
trusted.
actually quite fond of for 10 years. And you've got like Charming, whose mother died just so that him and his wife could have a kid, and
there's just so much really cruel stuff happening to everyone else that Emma continuously going back to, I had a shitty childhood because I was a foster kid, doesn't really measure up. All of these characters have become real to you as a viewer, and they're exactly as real as she is, and you have, you know, everyone else, and suddenly Emma again and again and again and again going back to, I was lonely. We've done this. You have
also
your family.
considering that at this point, just in this time of the show, people have also gone through some pretty shitty stuff. Regina's lost her mother. She had to see her mother being murdered. She, in fact, had a hand in it accidentally. She lost her boyfriend twice. She's gone through some heavy shit, and everybody else has too. So I think if they'd kept like the fairy tale characters still a bit cartoonish, then it would really have worked to have like a real person with real problems. But because everybody else has now also got real problems as well as their completely diabolical shit that happens to them all the time, it does kind of make it hard to measure up the fact that her main issue is that she was lonely, which is not a good thing, and it would be a very relatable, very difficult, terrible thing in a show where everybody else was a normal person. But because everybody comes from this crazy ass fairy tale world where they were basically tortured their entire lives, it's just kind of like, okay, but you had running water and nobody tried to kill you. So
yeah, it's a
you
little
had
bit
a
like
cell
that.
phone.
Overall, I really enjoyed the season finale more than I have enjoyed any of the other ones. They managed to deliver a really good message. I think the gist of it is that the happy ending is just living your life every day the way you want to and just striving for that everyday happiness. I think when the show tries to bridge the gap between the fairy tale and the Disney and all of the magical stuff and how that relates to the real world, it sometimes does it very well, and I think that's one of those times. That was really sweet and very relatable. That's something
it was a good point.
Take away.
It was a good point that could be taken away by people in real life, as opposed to I will always find you, or let's kill the dragon.
As opposed to things that seem to only relate to fairy tale characters, because we know that in the real world, good doesn't always necessarily win just because you love somebody or just because you
not
kiss
wake people
somebody
up from a stabbing wound.
Yeah, so that was a really good thing to leave us with, which does actually relate to the real world.
Yeah.
They are ending an era. They are essentially starting a new story. It worked for me. I'm glad I watched it. I'm glad that it managed to pull me back into Once Upon a Time. And I'm excited for season 7. So we'll see where that goes. That's all from us. Thank you for watching.
Yeah.
And see you next time.
See you later. Bye.